All right, let's talk about one of the most powerful, but honestly, one of the most overlooked tools a project manager has, the project charter. And look, I want you to forget about it being just another document you have to fill out. This is the foundation. It's the blueprint for any successful project.
But before we get into the solution, let's talk about the problem. I mean, we've all been there, right? You're on a project and it just starts to spiral out of control. Deadlines are flying by, the budget's a total mess, and it feels like nobody can even agree on what you're supposed to be doing. It's a super common story. So why does this happen over and over again? You might think, oh, it's just bad execution, or we had the wrong people on the team. But the truth is, the whole thing was probably doomed to fail before a single person did any real work. The problem often starts way back, in that quiet period right before a project is even officially kicked off. Okay, so let's really dig into that. We're going to look at what happens in that vacuum, that pre-launch phase, and see exactly how it sets the stage for total project chaos. And this quote from our source material just says it all, doesn't it? It's not about working harder, It's about starting smarter. The lack of a solid approved charter, that's the real culprit behind so many failures that were completely avoidable. And you can see that chaos laid out right here. I mean, think about it. Without a charter, you've got these fuzzy, vague goals. That immediately leads to fights over who's actually in charge. Next thing you know, stakeholders are arguing, the scope just keeps growing and growing, and all the while, the budget is just gone. Does any of this sound familiar? Yeah, this is what happens when you build a project on sand.
So the big question is, how do we get out of this mess? How do we avoid it in the first place? Well, the answer is the project charter. And I want you to think of it exactly like an architect's blueprint for a building. It's that foundational plan for success.
Now, check out this definition. It calls the charter the strategic birth certificate of a project. I love that phrasing. It's so perfect. See, it's not just a plan. It's the official document that gives your project's life. It gives it legitimacy, and maybe most importantly, the authority it needs to get resources and actually move forward. What it really does is act as this crucial bridge. It takes that high-level business idea, the good idea, and translates it into a real, actionable, authorized plan that the team can actually execute. It's what connects the why we're doing this to the how we're going to get it done. And this is a really, really important distinction to make because people mix these two up all the time. A business case, that's all about the why. It argues for why the project is a good investment. It's answering the question, should we even do this? But the project charter, that comes after the business case is approved. It's the how. It formally authorizes the project and lays out how we're going to pull it off. So one justifies, the other authorizes. Big difference. All right, so we get what a charter is. Now let's pop the hood and see what actually goes inside one. We're going to break down the anatomy of a strong charter, and you'll see it's actually pretty straightforward. When you boil it all down, a really great charter just has to give clear, solid answers to 3 core questions. Let's walk through them. First up is the why. The charter has to answer the big question. Why on earth are we even doing this? This is where you connect the project directly to the business goals. You're defining the problem you're trying to solve, or maybe the opportunity you're chasing. This makes sure everyone is on the same page about the strategic reason this project even exists. Next up, the what. In other words, what does success actually look like when we're done? This is where you put a box around the project. You define exactly what's in scope and, just as important, what's out of scope. You list the key deliverables, and you set up clear, measurable ways to know if you've won. You're turning a fuzzy idea into a concrete target. And finally, we have the who and how. This is where you lay out the rules of the game. Who are the key stakeholders? Who's the sponsor with the final say? What's the high-level budget and timeline look like? And, maybe most critically, who has the authority to make the big decisions when things get tough? Answering this stuff is what prevents all that confusion and conflict we talked about earlier. Okay, so you know the why, the what's, and the who. So, how do you actually make one of these things? Let's get into the nitty-gritty of forging your own charter. Now, this is absolutely crucial. As the project manager, your job is not to be a secretary. You're not just typing up a document. Your role is one of leadership. You're the one facilitating the tough conversations, you're challenging assumptions, and you're driving the process forward to get that formal, signed-off authorization from the project sponsor. It's a leadership role, not a clerical one. And here's how that process generally looks, broken down into 4 simple steps. First, you dive deep into the business case to really understand the why. Then, you get all the key stakeholders in a room, or a virtual room, for a workshop to hash out the details and get everybody aligned. After that, you take all those discussions and draft the formal charter document. And finally, the most important step, you get that signature. You get formal sign-off from the sponsor. That's the moment the project is officially born. But once that charter is signed, its job is far from over. In fact, in many ways, it's just getting started. It becomes your project's North Star, the single point of reference that guides you through the whole journey. And I think this quote just captures that value perfectly. It's a living reference document. This isn't something you create, file away, and never look at again. No way. When disagreements pop up, when you're at a crossroads and need to make a big decision, you pull out the charter. It's the anchor that keeps the entire team grounded and pulling in the same direction. And this, right here, is the ultimate payoff. All that chaos we talked about at the beginning, the charter is your shield against it. When someone comes along and asks for just one more little thing, you can point right to the scope that's defined in the charter. When stakeholders can't agree on which way to go, the charter is your single source of truth. It's what brings clarity to the conversation.
So, as we wrap this up, I'll just leave you with this one question to chew on. Your next big project, your next big initiative, are you going to build it on a solid foundation of clarity, alignment, and authority? Or are you just going to build it on sand and hope for the best? The choice and the charter is up to you. Thanks for listening.